Two couples live 4 houses apart on the same suburban street. Call them the Harrisons and the Parkers. Same zip code, both in their late 30s, both pulling in around 115 grand combined. Both just wrote the final check on their last debt last year. Walk into the Harrisons' house and you'll find a brand new Tahoe in the driveway with 18 months of payments ahead of it, a kitchen mid-renovation because we finally can, and a calendar with 3 trips booked on credit cards they swear they'll pay off this month. They're back in the hole, they just haven't admitted it yet. Walk into the Parker's house and you'll find a 2017 Camry with 140,000 miles on it. A brokerage statement showing 94 grand that wasn't there 2 years ago, and a wife casually looking up what it would take to quit her job and start a bakery. Same income, same starting point, same month of debt freedom. My name is Nick, and I've spent way too much time analyzing why 2 households with identical finishing lines end up in completely different universes 5 years later. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. This isn't a video about how to get out of debt. There are 6,000 of those. This is about what happens the day after. Crossing the debt-free finish line isn't the ending. It's where the real plot starts. And which driveway you end up parked in has almost nothing to do with how much you earn. Before I get into the good stuff, I want you to sit somewhere for a second. Sit at your kitchen table at 11 p.m. on a Monday. The lamp is on, your spouse went to bed an hour ago, your laptop is open to a spreadsheet you've already opened 17 times this month, the credit card balance is $6,800, the car payment is $767. The student loans are whatever the app says. You've stopped looking at the exact number because it doesn't matter anymore. You're doing mental math you've already done. You're trying to figure out whether you can push one payment into next month without the world ending. You check your phone, you open the credit card app, you close it without logging in, you open it again, you log in this time. The number is exactly what you thought it would be, which somehow makes it worse. You don't tell your spouse how bad it is. They don't tell you either. It's the conversation you've both been not having for about 2 years now. Okay, hold that feeling, because we're going to talk about what replaces it. Let's start with the money itself, because the numbers are genuinely insane and nobody ever runs them. The average American household carries a mortgage payment of around $2,200, a car payment of $767. That's the actual Experian number from Q4 2025, by the way. A credit card minimum on an average balance of about $6,800 plus student loans somewhere between $200 and $400 a month. Stack that up, and you're looking at roughly $3,300 to $3,800 leaving your checking account every single month before you've bought a single gallon of gas. And here's what nobody says out loud. That money isn't being spent on you. It's being spent on the version of you from 3 years ago who made a few decisions that are still billing you today. A debt payment is just a monthly subscription to your past self's bad decision. When you become completely debt-free, that subscription cancels and the money doesn't disappear. It reappears. This is where people's brains tend to short circuit because they've spent so many years sending that $3,500 into the void that they kind of forgot it was theirs. The Bureau of Economic Analysis says the average American saves 3.6% of their disposable income. 3.6. That's a rounding error. A debt-free household with the same income can save 25 to 30% without feeling the squeeze because they're not funding the rounding error, they're funding themselves. Now let me run the math that should honestly be taught in high school but isn't, because that would be too useful. You're 35 and you hit debt-free. You take $1,500 a month and put it into a boring index fund at 7% real returns. At 65, you've got roughly $1.83 million. Wait 5 years and start at 40, you end up with $1.22 million. Wait until 45, you're at $781,000. Every 5 years you wait is a different house you'll never buy, a different career you'll never take, a different version of your 50s you'll never get to live. Compounding at 7% is the most boring superpower in the universe, which is exactly why nobody uses it. Okay, the money is the surface thing. If the story ended with, "You have more money now," this video would be 90 seconds long. The weirder change is what happens inside your own head. A study from 2013 in Social Science and Medicine tracked over 8,000 young adults. The ones with the highest debt-to-asset ratios had measurably higher blood pressure, more symptoms of depression, and 11% more perceived daily stress than people with low debt. Not felt, measured. Their bodies were running hotter because their bank accounts were running colder. There's also this study from Princeton, the famous one, that found financial stress reduces cognitive function by an amount equivalent to losing an entire night of sleep, or about 13 IQ points. 13. So every dumb decision you've made while drowning in debt wasn't because you're stupid. It was because the debt was literally eating the part of your brain that makes decisions. The researchers called it the bandwidth tax, which is a polite academic way of saying being broke makes you dumber. Here's what that looks like in your life, because the abstraction doesn't do it justice. You stop forgetting the grocery list, you stop snapping at your kid over nothing, you stop lying awake at 2 a.m. doing mental math you've already done 17 times this week. You stop making that specific face when the credit card bill comes. The face where your jaw clenches for half a second before you open the envelope. Your spouse notices first. They'll say something like, "You seem different lately." And you'll shrug because you don't know how to explain that the ambient hum of financial dread that's been playing in the background of your skull for 8 years just stopped. That's what debt-free feels like in week one. It's not euphoria, it's the absence of something you forgot was there. Now, I need you to stay with me for the next 2 minutes because what I'm about to tell you about your boss is the part most people don't see coming until they're already free. When that mental bandwidth comes back, you start behaving in ways your past self literally could not have behaved. And this is the shift that changes everything else downstream. There's a concept called FU money, and it got popularized by John Goodman in a Mark Wahlberg gambling movie from 2014. But the idea is older. The basic version goes, a wise person arranges their life so that at any moment, if someone asks them to do something that violates their dignity, they can say no. Not diplomatically, the actual phrase, most people never get this, not because they don't earn enough, because they owe too much. A person with a $400,000 mortgage, 2 car payments, and $15,000 in credit card debt cannot, as a physical fact of the universe, tell their boss to pound sand. They can't negotiate hard. They can't push back on the manager dumping weekend work on them. They can't take the pay cut to move into the career they actually want because the monthly nut is sitting there waiting for them on the first of every month like a very patient hostage situation. A debt-free person has a completely different relationship with their employer, not because they're rich. They might not be rich, but your boss doesn't know you're free. You do, and that changes every meeting. This is why the Kauffman Foundation found that roughly 65% of all startup capital in this country comes from personal savings, not loans, not venture capital. And it's why the Philadelphia Fed found graduates with $40,000 or more in student debt are 37% less likely to start a business than their debt-free peers. They literally can't. The debt acts as an entrepreneurship tax, and most people pay it without knowing they're paying it. When you're completely debt-free, the calculus flips. The question isn't, can I afford to take this risk? It's, why would I not? Now, I can hear some of you already. But Nick, I'll never be fully debt-free. I have a mortgage for 25 more years. This video isn't for me. It is for you. Because most of what I'm describing kicks in the moment you kill the consumer debt. The cars, the cards, the student loans, the mortgage is the final chapter, not the only one. Getting rid of everything except the house is about 80% of the psychological payoff. You don't have to wait 25 years to feel most of this. You have to wait maybe 3. Okay? Back to the story, because remember the Harrisons? This is where they fell. We've established more money, better brain, more courage, sounds like paradise. Cue the triumphant montage, except there's a trap at the finish line, and it gets about 1 in 6 people who reach it. NerdWallet did a survey in 2025 that found roughly 17% of Americans who've paid off their credit card debt entirely have gone right back into it at least once. 1 in 6. And the reason this happens is a cognitive quirk called the arrival fallacy. The arrival fallacy was named by a Harvard psychologist named Tal Ben-Shahar. It describes the crushing realization that getting the thing you wanted for years does not feel the way you thought it would feel. People assume the final debt payment will feel like crossing the finish line at the Olympics, confetti, tears, music swelling. In reality, for most people, the final payment processes as a boring little transaction, and then you go make dinner. There's no ceremony. The universe does not acknowledge you. The mortgage app just updates to 0, and that's it. And a certain type of person faced with that anticlimax does something predictable. They celebrate, not in a small way. They look at the empty budget line where the debt payment used to live, and they think, you know what, we earned this. We should upgrade the car. We should finally do the kitchen. We deserve the nice vacation. This is exactly what happened to the Harrisons. Final student loan payment cleared on a Tuesday in March. By Friday, they were at the dealership. The salesman didn't even have to sell them. They sold themselves. We've been so good for so long. 6 months later, the $1,500 a month they'd freed up was gone, absorbed into the Tahoe and the Disney trip and the subscriptions they suddenly had time to notice. They're not in catastrophic debt, but they're not compounding either, and quietly, invisibly, they traded $1.83 million in future wealth for a 3-row SUV that'll be worth $8,000 in 8 years. Lifestyle creep doesn't knock. It moves in while you're celebrating, and this is not an accident, by the way. Credit card companies design minimum payments specifically to keep you paying forever. The entire consumer finance industry is engineered to get you back in. Your credit card company's customer service line is open 24/7 because they're genuinely worried about you, and by you, I mean your balance. The second trap is subtler, and it has to do with the people around you. There's a phenomenon called crab mentality. If you put a single crab in a bucket, it climbs out. If you put several crabs in a bucket, none of them get out because every time one starts to escape, the other crabs pull it back down. Human beings do this too. Work from Nicholas Christakis at Yale has shown that behaviors literally spread through social networks like a virus. Your odds of becoming obese go up 57% if a close friend becomes obese. Smoking, drinking, even happiness, all contagious across about 3 degrees of social connection. Money habits are no exception. And this is the part nobody warns you about. When you become debt-free while your friends, siblings, cousins, and coworkers are not, and statistically they are not, because only about 23% of American households are completely debt-free, including mortgage, something weird starts happening in your social life. Some people will be thrilled for you. A certain percentage will not. They won't say it out loud, but you'll notice they make comments about how you never want to go out anymore, how you got lucky, how you must have had help, how you've changed. You haven't changed. You've just stopped co-signing the agreement that everyone in the bucket has to stay in the bucket. Then there's the family piece, which is worse. Once word gets out that you're debt-free, and it will because somebody's mom will tell somebody's sister, you will start getting requests. A cousin needs help with a deposit. A sibling's car blew up. A parent has a medical thing. Some will be legitimate. Some will be a person who has been financially irresponsible their whole life, looking at you and thinking, well, he has it. Bankrate ran a survey that found 70% of Americans have lent money to family or friends, and 55% of those loans ended with the money gone, the relationship damaged, or both. A certified financial planner named Megan Brinsfield said it best. Just assume that lending money to family is the equivalent of setting it on fire. If you can handle that fire cheerfully, go ahead. If you can't, don't. Now, let me tell you what happens when someone crosses the finish line and keeps their head. The Parkers, 4 houses down. The first big shift is invisible for about a year. They're not buying anything. They're not bragging. Life kind of looks the same from the outside, but underneath, the brokerage account is growing in a way that's hard to believe until you've watched it happen. Here's what compounding looks like from the inside. Year 1 of $1,500 a month. You end with around $19,000. Nice. Not life-changing. Year 3, $61,000. Year 5, $110,000. Now it's real. Year 10, $259,000. Year 15, $476,000. Year 20, $786,000. Bigger than the annual income of the person you were before. And somewhere in that window, usually year 5 or 6, a specific thing happens. You stop thinking of yourself as a person who used to have debt and start thinking of yourself as a person who has money. That identity shift is what separates the people who keep the wealth from the people who blow it up. Ramsey Solutions did a study of 10,000 millionaires. Like 79% didn't inherit anything. 94% live on less than they make. 75% said the biggest factor in their wealth was regular, boring, consistent investing over decades. Not lottery tickets, not crypto moonshots, not grandpa's farm. 30 years of index funds and a paid off house. It's not complicated, it's just hard because it requires you to become a different kind of person on the way there. Here's what nobody tells you about the real prize. I know it's weird to hear this in a finance video, but the real prize of debt freedom isn't the money, it's that you get your decisions back. Think about how much of your adult life has been dictated by money you already owed. You picked the job for the paycheck, not the work. You picked the house based on what the bank approved, not what made sense for your life. You skipped the vacation because the card was maxed. You stayed at the company one more year because the bonus covered the car loan. You chose the career path that paid, not the one you wanted because you had a payment due. When all of that goes away, for the first time in your adult life, you get to choose based on what you actually want. You could take 6 months off. Switch industries, cut your hours to be home when your kid gets off the bus. Start the business, move to a smaller town. Say no to the promotion that comes with more stress and more hours and money you don't need. You could do things that would make a 25-year-old version of you, lying awake at 2 a.m. with a credit card statement, weep with gratitude. This is what the financial press calls optionality, and it's the single most underrated word in personal finance. People chase dollar amounts because dollar amounts are easy to measure. Optionality is harder to measure, but it's what you're actually after. You don't want a pile of money. You want the number of doors you can walk through at any given moment. The Parkers are 5 years in now. She opened the bakery last spring. He dropped to 4 days a week. Their kid does homework at the counter after school while she closes up. None of that required getting rich. It required not owing anything. The debt wasn't just costing them money, it was costing them versions of themselves they never got to meet. Debt closes doors, debt freedom opens them. So here's the whole thing in one frame. If you're currently in debt, the actual climb is not the hard part. The hard part is the day after you finish. You'll have this weird moment of emptiness and your brain will try to fill it with a car, a renovation, a vacation, a new hobby that costs $4,000 to start. Your job in that moment is to do nothing. Sit in the quiet. Don't buy anything. Let the money pile up in boring, unexciting ways until you can hear your own thoughts again. The version of you that crosses that finish line is not a slightly modified copy of who you are right now. It's a different person with a different relationship to work, to time, to risk, to the people around you, and to your own reflection in the mirror. So look at your driveway right now. The Tahoe or the Camry, the Harrisons or the Parkers, you're going to be parked in one of those driveways in 10 years. You already know which one you want. The only question is whether you're willing to become the kind of person who ends up there. Every dollar you owe is a dollar voting for the life you already have. Every dollar you save is a dollar voting for the life you haven't lived yet. That's the whole game. If this helped, hit the like button, subscribe if you want more content that actually runs the math. Drop a comment telling me which driveway you're aiming for. I read them and it keeps me going. I'll see you in the next one.